Hey, what's up guys? Matt Laidlaw here, coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, LA area's oldest, largest, and finest Harley-Davidson dealership. So we got our demo truck here this weekend, Friday and Saturday, September 8th and 9th of 2017. We have all the 2018 bikes for demo, so if you're in our neck of the woods, come on down and demo ride some of the stuff. So today I want to do a review on the 2018 Street Bob. Alright guys, so let me jump into this thing here. So this is a 2018 Softail Street Bob. That sounds really weird to say. I gotta focus every time I say that instead of saying Dyna Street Bob, because since 2006, when the Street Bob was first introduced, these have always been on the Dyna chassis. But the big news is this year, if you haven't heard already, Softails are Dynas and Dynas are Softails. They came out with a brand new frame this year, and they call it a Softail chassis. And so they took 3 of the Dyna, previously known as Dyna models, and made them Softails, along with 5 of the Softail models. So anyways, this is the Milwaukee 8 powerhouse here, and it's a 107 cubic inch, and this engine is in every way superior to the old twin cam 103 that was on the 2016 Street Bob. So this is a 100% completely different bike this year in 2018 as opposed to the 2017 model year. Here is your new headlight. This is a LED Daymaker headlamp on there. The Street Bob is kind of your rat rod bobber, real minimalist, in what was once known as the Dyna family and is now the Softail family. It's your minimalist, lowest priced Softail this year. You've got a single disc brake in the front, 4-piston caliper. This thing bites really good. It's a lot better than the single disc brakes that were on the previous generation Dynas and Dyna Street Bobs. You can see up front there the oil cooler. So this bike utilizes Harley-Davidson's Milwaukee 8 engine that was introduced last year on just exclusively in the touring bikes. So this is a variation of that same Milwaukee 8 design. 4 valves per cylinder, that's where it gets its name, Milwaukee 8, for a total of 8 valves. You got a single cam in this bike as opposed to the twin cam engine of old. This is the iron red denim paint job. This is a adhesive emblem on the side of the tank here. Looks like a metal looking emblem, looks real sharp. So this is a 3.5 gallon tank. So there are 3 bikes in the Softail family that have a smaller 3.5 gallon tank. This is one of them, and this is a real clean tank too. You just have the cap there. Seat's just a solo tuck and roll seat. Goes real well with the whole bobber theme of this bike. This is kind of your rat rod, minimalist, all black, less chrome type of a motorcycle. Spoke wheels on this, chopped fenders, side mounted license plate mount there. You just got the 2 bullet turn signals there. Most people tear off that little reflector on the back of the fender, but I think for legality purposes they have to have it back there. So you got your blacked out belt guard and pulley back there. One of the things they did this year with these Softail frames is they really reduced the weight of the bike, and one of the many ways they did to do that, one of the methods they used to do that was they used aluminum in a lot of the parts whereas it used to be steel. So here's your 4 spark plugs there. You got 2 plugs per cylinder now in this Milwaukee 8 design. This particular bike here, it has ABS on it. You can get the Street Bob with or without ABS. You pay $795 upcharge to get the ABS from the factory. If you want ABS, you have to get a bike with ABS from the factory. It cannot be added after the fact. 91 octane in these things in California, which is considered premium fuel. If you live at a higher altitude, you might use a lower octane. So here's a new LCD screen on these bikes, guys. So this is a handlebar mounted LCD screen. It's all digital, so your speedometer is digital there, and you can cycle your functions here on that little trip switch that I just showed you. You got a trip A, a trip B, and you got your fuel indicator there as well. That R is how many miles you have before you run out of gas. You got your clock, and I like this RPM tack there. This is the odometer here. And here's your trip A. Hold down that switch to zero out your trip meters. I'm going to go ahead and zero them out. Your fuel on the left is that bar display there. And so yeah, it's a digital readout now instead of that speedometer. And then below that is this little screen where it has like your indicator of like as far as your neutral, your oil lamp, your turn signals, your engine light. That engine light goes out when the bike is running. If it stays on when the bike is running, you know there's a problem. Here's another shot of the LED daymaker headlamp on. This is like I said before, one of the demo bikes, guys. This weekend we have Harley-Davidson's demo truck here to allow our customers to test ride all these new 18 models. We're the first dealer in Southern California to have this demo truck here at our dealership to allow people to ride the new bikes. This is a shot of the oil cooler. The Milwaukee 8 utilizes a sophisticated oil cooling system that has lines that circulate oil through the heads around the exhaust ports, you know, around the hottest part of the engine to help cool it down. And yeah, so really what you have with the new Softail chassis this year, as Harley says it, and I would agree with what Harley says, it takes the best of the Softails and it takes the best of the Dynas and combines those two chassis into one kind of super chassis in the Harley-Davidson world. So you've got the aesthetics of the Softail. You no longer have those exposed shocks in the rear like you used to have. The shocks are now, well, the shock I should say in the rear is a monoshock underneath the seat that you can adjust the preload on. And so you don't have any visible suspension in the rear, which is why they adopted the name Softail, I would say, instead of Dyna. That's just speculation on my part. But this engine is also hard mounted to the frame. They use a dual counterbalancing system in there to counterbalance this thing. And you know, by doing that, they were able to increase the stiffness of the frame 91% over previous generation Dynas. And guys, if you haven't heard already, let me be the first to tell you that this frame handles a lot better than the old Dyna frame. I mean, not just a little bit, like it's a completely different bike. It makes you a better rider by riding it. I mean, I was doing things when I went on the test ride on this bike that I wouldn't feel confident in the chassis and the suspension to do on the previous generation Dynas. So you just have the ability to ride these bikes a lot harder than the old ones. So here's a picture, guys, in the parts catalog of a customized Street Bob. You got Harley-Davidson, I think these are called the chiseled handlebars with the passenger pillion back there. Here's a couple windshields that are available. You can get in a 14 or 18 inch. There's a new docking system this year for the chassis, guys, and this is something not a lot of people are talking about yet, but something that is a huge benefit to these new Softails. It's called the Hold Fast system. It's kind of a new system that is geared towards just making things a lot easier and more accessible to put a variation of different accessories on the back of these bikes. And what I mean by accessories are, you know, your sissy bars, your bags if the bike doesn't come with bags like the Heritage, and like tour packs and things like that. So they make it a lot easier for owners of these Softails and specifically the Street Bob to put, you know, a passenger backrest back there and luggage rack. Before this model year, you had to do a rear turn signal relocation kit that made your rear turn signals kind of bug out funny, and you know, cost more money and labor to do stuff like that. I think you had to relocate the license plate too. I'm not sure, but yeah, this year things are just a lot easier. Plus, you know, there's just more universal fitments, so availability of parts will be better. Here's some, you know, saddlebags here, and these will fit the Street Bob. They're not really your Dyna Nation style saddlebags, but you know, there are bags if you want to throw those on the back. And so yeah, once again, adding a passenger backrest is just a lot easier with this new docking system, and the way that the latches work on the hardware that bolts onto the struts, it's just a lot better and easier to use and to latch and unlatch and things. So yeah, I've played with it, in person a little bit, and I like it a lot. Here's a chart, guys, that explains a lot of stuff. I think a lot of you will find this useful. So the FXBB in the top column, this is the Street Bob. So these are available shocks you can get for the bike. So the profile low front suspension, if you want to lower the bike, you get the lowered front shocks. This bike comes with the low rear suspension already. So 6 of the 8 Softails already have the low rear suspension. So the Breakout has it, the Deluxe have the low rear end suspension, the Fat Boy has the low suspension, and the Slim has the low rear suspension. Those are all stock. So those 6 bikes have a shorter monoshock underneath the seat there. Now the Heritage and the Fat Bob, those have the taller rear shock underneath the seat, that monoshock. So for that reason, guys, these 2 bikes, the Fat Bob and the Heritage, have the best overall ride quality because they have more travel in the shocks. Anytime you have more travel, more available, travel in that suspension, it's going to make for a better ride. And the Street Bob has the mid controls. I probably should have mentioned that sooner. So feet straight down, mid control style. Not the best for me. I'm 6'6" tall, so I'd probably want to do a forward control type setup. So here's a shot of that lower profile suspension for the front. If you wanted to lower the Street Bob even more, I wouldn't recommend it unless you really needed it due to a shorter inseam. Because like I said before, anytime you shorten up the travel of the shocks, you're compromising the ride a little bit. But you can do that and lower the front end. So this is 18 and later, fits the Deluxe, the Heritage S, which is the 114, the Slim, the Street Bob, the Lowrider. So, and right here, these are the low profile shocks for the Heritage and also for the Fat Bob. The FXFB is the Fat Bob, and the FXFBS, that S at the end, guys, just designates it having the 114 as opposed to the 107. So here's a shot of the shocks here. So the Fat Bob has the dial preload, the external dial preload. So that would be the shock on the right there. This one that I'm circling here. And then the shock on the left there. This is the preload is adjusted with the 8mm wrench. You got to open up take off the seat to dial in the preload on this. The Fat Bob, you have that dial. Really, the Fat Bob, guys, the Fat Bob kind of has it all. If you're looking for, mechanical, the bike that's mechanically the best performer in every way, in every detail, it's the Fat Bob. So, yeah, the Street Bob's a great bike. It's definitely less expensive than the Fat Bob. But if you really want the best performing, probably the best performing Harley out there this year, since there's no more V-Rod, the Fat Bob is your bike, in every respect, suspension, handling, braking. But anyways, yeah, I thought this was a good piece of content here that a lot of people aren't really talking about at this point in time. The other thing is these are the available seats as well. So you got a tall boy seat. And I'll also talk to you about the seats for a second. These something that's cool about these new Softails is a lot of the seats that come with a 2-up seat, they're individual seats, so you can take off the rear passenger seat independent of the front seat. So let's say you have a 2-up seat, like let's say you have a Fat Boy that has that small little seat in the back. You can just change just the seat and the passenger seat and not change the front rider seat. So you can kind of mix and match rider and passenger seats a lot better on these new Softails, which is a huge benefit. And this is something that Harley does better than anybody. I can't think of any manufacturer out there that has this many options on seats and backrests and just kind of the ergonomics oriented parts and stuff on the bike. All right, so let's jump into the available colors in the 2018 model year. So the first one we have available is the Vivid Black, commonly referred to as Gloss Black. The handlebars too on this bike, guys, is a side note of the mini ape hangers. They've got this textured wrinkle black to them. They're a cool finish. It's almost like the engine texture. This is olive gold here. This next one is red iron denim. That's the color I'm using in this video today. And this is a color that came out last year. So this is the Wicked Red and Twisted Cherry. Two new shades of red that just came out this model year. I really like the Twisted Cherry, by the way. This is industrial gray denim and black denim. I really like this color. I think if I were to get this bike, I'd probably get this color or the iron red denim. I'm kind of a fan of the denim paint on this particular model. So you pay a little bit more for the two-tone options. Vivid black is the least expensive. Then you pay a little bit more for the solid colors like the olive gold. Here's just kind of some highlights on the bike. The new frame at the Milwaukee 8 engine. Minimalist technology, they say. I mean, there's really the only technology on this, on as far as like digital, like LCD stuff, is just the speedo. Let me jump into some specs here. So engine torque, 110 foot-pounds of torque. I believe that's at the crank. So I'm going to compare some bikes here. So I'm going to compare, a Street Bob, and I'm going to go ahead and throw a Roadster in there, just to mix things up a little bit and not just compare three Softails. The Roadster is the highest, best performing Sportster. And those things they're fun bikes to ride. The Roadsters have really tall suspension, big wheels. I think it's at 18-inch in the rear, 19 in the front, I believe. So here's the pricing. So you're at $14,499 for the Street Bob, $11,299 for the Roadster, and $14,999 for the Lowrider. So about $500 more for the Lowrider. And I'll be doing a Lowrider video in the future here and going into in-depth detail on the Lowrider. So ABS is an option on all of these bikes for $795. Security comes standard on all Softails this model year. You can get security for $395 on the Roadster if you want to get that factory upgrade. Security is one option that you can always add at the dealership as well, as opposed to ABS, which has to be added at the factory. So the engines, the Softails have the Milwaukee 8107, and the Roadster has an air-cooled Evolution. It's a 1200cc engine. And here's the displacement, 107 cubic inches. The 1200cc equates to 73.4 cubic inches. And they've all got a 10-to-1 compression ratio. So that's one thing that they did increase with the Milwaukee 8 was they increased the compression ratio. I think just your regular 103 ran at like a 9-to-1 or a 9.5-to-1 compression ratio. So the seat height, the Street Bob is the lowest. The Lowrider, you got a 27-inch, and then the Roadster is the tallest. These Roadsters have really tall suspension on them, which kind of lends to how good of a bike they are. I mean, the Roadster is really just a really good canyon carver with the dual disc brakes and inverted forks up front. Roadster has a lot of performance parts on it, but I'd still take a Street Bob over a Roadster. Roadster is kind of a niche bike where you really just got to be like really hammering on the canyons. It's a really fun bike, and it's a fun bike to turn into like a cafe racer style bike. So rear tire, Street Bob, you got a 150 millimeter rear tire. The Lowrider, a little bit fatter tire, 180. And fuel capacity, 3.5 gallons on the Street Bob, and you got the 5-gallon tank on the Lowrider, which is nice. The three Softails, by the way, guys, that come with the smaller 3.5 gallon or the Fat Bob, the Street Bob, and the Breakout. The rest of the Softails this year, the other 5, come with the 5-gallon tank. So weight, obviously the Roadster weighs like 100 pounds less. So torque, 110 foot-pounds of torque on the two Softails and 76 foot-pounds of torque on the Roadster. And that gets produced at 3,000 RPM. Roadster, you got to rub it out a little bit more to reach that max torque. The lean angle is the lowest on the Street Bob, but it's still a lot better than previous generation Dyna frames. That's one thing that Harley really made an effort to do, is increase the lean angle. Bikes all have about 47. Roadster has 48 miles to the gallon fuel economy. And so that kind of gives you a glimpse at some of the comparative features. The Street Bob and the Lowrider are both Softails that you need to take the seat off and use the wrench to adjust the preload. So here's some power charts, guys, just because I get asked a lot of questions about power. So stock out of the box, you're hitting about 80 horsepower on this bike, and like I said, about 110 foot-pounds of torque. And this is rear wheel, so yeah, you can see here rear wheel, it does probably about 104, 105 foot-pounds of torque, whereas at the crank, it does the 110 foot-pounds of torque. And the rest of those lines are all if you want to do like the stage kits, stage 1 through 4 kits.
Yeah, I think this will do well.
This new technology, it's kind of like, you know, you want old school stuff. I don't know how it's going to do with everything.
So anyways, I just want to kind of run the bike through the gambit a little bit, and you know, a lot of you guys say that you want to hear the sound of the engine and everything that's going on with the bike without having to battle over my voiceovers and my commentary and stuff. So I just wanted to give you just the bike alone for a couple minutes there. But anyways, it's kind of my initial reactions, guys, and it's kind of been the same with all these Softails as I've ridden them. This bike is completely different, guys, and you know, it's easy for people to stand up and, you know, at the dealer show, everyone said, oh my gosh, this bike is just way better in every single way. And to me, that's just kind of the cliche thing to say, but it really is. I mean, these bikes are a lot better really in every way. I mean, rolling on the throttle at 80 miles an hour, these things still pull hard. Just the power to weight ratio is just so much better than the old stuff. Just having a nice tight frame, I mean, you can crank on these things and, you know, do things and ride this bike harder than, you know, I've ever ridden a Harley. It'll take it and it will handle it. The suspension on this bike, you know, on the freeway like I just rode there, it handles it so much better. Like the old Street Bobs, when you got up at higher speeds, you started hitting bumps and stuff like that. It was kind of like, you know, hang on, kind of like a buck and bronco, hang on type of a deal. You know, these, you know, it's just a lot smoother, and the suspension reacts, and really the rebound is a big thing. You know, how controlled the suspension is going up and down, and so yeah, I can't say enough good things about how tight these frames are as well. Going into turns, and I'm not even pushing this bike, and the previous reviews I've done, I'm not even pushing the bikes anywhere near as hard as they can go. And I find myself, continually, progressively pushing the bike harder and harder. But yeah, I mean these, and they use the word Softail, guys, but really the only thing that makes this bike relatable to the old Softails is the fact that you can't see the shocks in the rear, and the fact that the engine is hard mounted to the frame and counterbalanced. Other than that, there's really nothing shared with this bike, the Softails of old. And I don't say that to put down the old Softails, and I don't say that just to kind of appease all the Dyna guys that are kind of scratching their heads and wondering if these new Softail Dynas are gonna cut the mustard. But I'll tell you what, with these bikes out now, I would never ride one of the old Dynas. I mean, unless it was just like a question of economics and a financial thing where I didn't want to spend the money to get one of these new ones. But these new Softails, like the Street Bob, I mean, they run circles around the old Dynas and especially the old Softails. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this bike. I do kind of prefer the rake on this as opposed to the Fat Bob. The Fat Bob has a really steep rake at 28 degrees. This is at 30 degrees. The handling of this is more like a cruiser type of a handling. That 28 degree rake on the Fat Bob was just like real razor sharp handling, and it's cool in the right conditions, but I kind of like it to be raked out a little bit more on a cruiser type bike like this. So yeah, I feel like and maybe it's just because I'm more used to it, to be quite honest. I'm not used to the slightest little input in the handlebars making a dramatic shift in your steering. And something I'm sure I could get used to, and once I get used to it, I'll probably enjoy it more. But for a cruiser, I think the rake on this bike is perfect for me. To maybe get into some things that I see as maybe potential cons or negatives about this bike. The seat, for one, I'm not a huge fan of the seat. I like the aesthetics, and it's definitely a lot better than the old Street Bob seat. The old Street Bob seat was, you're basically sitting on the frame. This one at least has some decent cushion, and I like the styling, that tuck and roll type styling. But there's a real lack of lower lumbar support. There's nothing to really keep you in place on this seat. I feel like when I was on the freeway really cranking on it, my weight was shifting back, and I like something to kind of secure me into the seat a little bit better. So if I were to buy a bike like this, I'd probably go to the tall boy seat or something that had a little bit lower back support. The other thing is, with this digital display we have here with your miles per hour and your gas and everything, I don't know if I prefer that to just the analog of old. The other thing is, since it's mounted to your handlebars, which is cool if you're going to leave things stock, I like it. But let's be honest, I think a lot of people are going to change the bars on this bike. You're really limited to what you can do as far as bars. You got to find something that's the right diameter bar to fit in that riser and that clamp there. So we've already run into some problems. I had a customer buy a breakout from me recently, and the breakout is another Softail that has that digital display right there on the handlebars, and so it kind of limited his options on handlebars. And while I'm talking about limiting options, and in comparing these to the old Dynas, with the old Dynas, I will say one of the benefits you have is you have just a huge selection of parts available to you. I mean, the Dyna frame and chassis has been around for a while with a lot of the same fitment stuff, so you have the benefit of a large array of different aftermarket parts and stuff to put on those bikes. On these Softails, you're kind of limited. Harley-Davidson has a lot of genuine Harley-Davidson stuff for these bikes, right away out of the gate, that'll help you do stuff. But things like other bar options and a lot of the things that the custom Dyna guys enjoyed doing, a lot of that stuff's not going to fit these bikes. So I guess that is one con to this new platform, is you don't have quite the customization availability. So another thing, and not everybody will think that this is a negative aspect, but Harley-Davidsons obviously are known for just getting on and having that real mechanical, raw feeling that you're on this heavy-duty piece of machinery, and you can feel the feedback from the engine and everything about the bike, and you're just really a motorcycle at its core. And a certain element of that has been taken away with these the new Milwaukee 8 and this new frame. It's certainly more refined, it's certainly better, performs a lot better, but just kind of like that old school Harley-Davidson feel and the characteristics and kind of the heart and soul of Harley-Davidson, a certain degree of that is lost. And you can probably say that about any generational change within these bikes, going from a knucklehead, a panhead, a shovelhead to the Evo to the twin cam. As you've progressed in technology and everything, it's all about making the riding experience the best, the most comfortable, the most user friendly, and so that's definitely the direction Harley-Davidson is going with this. But I guess you could say there's just an element of feeling a little bit less like a Harley. Don't get me wrong, it's still very much a Harley-Davidson, and I think Harley-Davidson has a real fine line to walk when they're trying to appease everybody who says that, oh, they shake too much, they're too hot, blah blah blah. It's you got to find that fine balance, and Harley-Davidson, I feel like, has found that fine line, that balance. But I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that probably will say, hey, it doesn't feel like a Harley anymore. There's also been a few people that have commented on the smaller gas tank on a few of these bikes, the Street Bob, the Breakout, and the Fat Bob. And I don't mind them. I actually kind of prefer the tank on this bike. I think the tank size and shape suit this bike for what it is and what it would mostly be used for. I mean, this isn't really a long distance bike. If you're a long distance rider, I wouldn't recommend this motorcycle to you. And I mean, you're going to get almost 50 miles to the gallon on this thing, so you'll probably get about 130 miles in real world use before you have to fill this thing up. So yeah, I don't really see that as a negative on this bike at all. But the lighting on this bike is good for what it is. Could it be better? Yeah, it could be better. But again, this is just a little bobber, and I think the lighting suits this bike for what it is. So yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of your bare bones bike. If you're a guy that's going long distance or traveling with a passenger a lot, can you set this bike up to do that type of riding? Sure. But if you're going to be doing that type of riding, it probably wouldn't be my first choice. I'd probably, if I like this styling, I'd probably go with like the Heritage or something like that if I was going to be doing 2-up riding. I'm putting my hands out to kind of feel the engine. I mean, these things run really cool, guys, for a Harley-Davidson, and it not being water cooled. It runs really cool. I'm putting my hands up like that. Yeah, sure, you feel heat, but I'm real familiar and in tune with the engines and the type of heat they give off, and this bike emits a lot less heat than that twin cam did. So just a quick little recap, and this is a shot from the dealer meeting. I would definitely recommend this bike to someone that wants to get into a big twin, kind of a cruiser style bike that's bigger than a Sportster. I personally, at our dealership, I think we're going to sell a lot of these things. I mean, at a price point of $14,500 to get into the big twin, the Milwaukee 8 on one of these new Softail frames, I think this is a really, really competitive price. And this is kind of your bare bones bike that I'm sure a lot of accessories and everything are going to be made for this motorcycle. And there's already quite a bit that are made from Harley-Davidson. So I'm a fan of this bike. I'd definitely recommend it to the guy that wants to ride a Harley-Davidson and wants to ride hard and aggressively. Can you ride this bike as aggressively as the Fat Bob? No, the Fat Bob has a lot of features about it that are a lot better than this bike. The seat's better, the suspension's taller, so smoother on the freeways at high speeds, inverted forks, so the front end handles a lot better, dual disc brakes. So the Fat Bob is kind of like the Softail on steroids that has everything, but this bike does really, really well, and at this price point of only about $500 more than the old previous generation Dyna, I mean, you're getting a lot more bike for that price point. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of these bikes, guys. Anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you're in the market for a new Street Bob or any other Harley-Davidson, you know where to find me. Hit me up. And thanks again for watching. If I was able to help you guys out, do me a favor, like the video. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks, guys.